the BBC, in effect, announced my death on the 1 o'clock news.
So your 3 minutes, 286 to 336. Your 20 minute, 220 to 250. And your 60 minutes gone from 200 to 230. So you're doing more for an hour now than you were for a 12-minute all-out effort. The overall gain is in the region of between 30 to 40% performance improvement.
Accident investigator I subsequently met in hospital told me he thought I was the luckiest man he'd met in his 20-year career. You know, I remember sat in Saddam Hussein's palace in Basra, marble everywhere. The British Army decided to take over as its headquarters. You always like to be grand. Why be uncomfortable? Even if you think you can't, if you have a slight inkling that maybe I could, you can. Always more to do. And I think in cycling it's always more to do. And I don't mean that's a bad thing, because I still think I can improve. I'm 63 and I still think I can improve.
The Oat Route Alps this summer, huge amount of progression from you in the last couple of years across the board. Where are you going? Yeah, we've just finished wrapping a really exciting podcast with one of my clients, Peter. Peter's been in the British Army for 20 years as a colonel. He's led big energy companies as a CEO, and in his 60s now, he's experiencing some of the biggest fitness gains that he's ever had in his life. We have a really interesting conversation about Peter's life, lessons that he's learned through various different stages of his careers, and also what it takes to be your fittest in your 60s. So I really hope you're going to enjoy this. I'm very excited for you to listen. Peter Sharpe, you have been a colonel in the British Army.
Some time ago.
You've come back from the dead.
Well, as I say, a little strong. I won't quite put it like that. Knocked about a bit.
Quite a bit. You've led some very large organisations. Most recently as the CEO of a large renewable energy company.
Yes.
And now you're going into some of the hardest endurance challenges on your bike that it's possible to do in the world.
Yes.
So I'm interested to know, how does endurance sport test a part of you that you don't feel has been tested before?
I mean, if I go back, to the start of my career, in the army, fitness was just a core skill. Just a core skill that it was an essential part of doing your job, really. Then when I moved out of the army and into sort of the next phase of business, as I did more and more senior roles, endurance sport to me was, yes, it was the health benefits of being fit, which everybody knows about, but also it was de-stressing for me. It allowed me to sort of just get away, do something that wasn't involved in the job, and you live in the moment. When you're cycling, when you're skiing, you're living in the moment. It's like being a child again. You're not worried about what happened an hour ago or what's happening in an hour, unless you're about to go up a big hill. You probably are, but yeah. So it's very de-stressful. And I certainly used to think through problems when I was on the bike. And most of my cycling has been solo and out of choice. I enjoyed the odd group ride, but I just like that ability to have the headspace to think things through, and actually exercising hard for some reason helps me think issues through.
Thank you very much. Yesterday we went on the bike and we did a lap around the Isle of Wight.
We did.
And you were talking about your life, and we were getting a bit of a prep for today's conversation that we were going to be having. And you nicely articulated that you feel your life's got several chapters. So the first big chapter which has formed who you are today was with the army phase.
Yes.
So I'm interested to know what happened in the army, what kind of things you experienced whilst you were there, and maybe talk through where you were and what you were doing in your career and how that might have impacted who you are today and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes. I mean, I think there are 4 or 5 things in my life that have been fundamental in forming my character, and I would certainly place chronologically the army as the second in that list, and it formed a lot about me. In particular, the initial training at Sandhurst that then went on, and the most flippant one is if you're not 5 minutes early, you're already late, and many of the people I've worked with have learnt to hate that phrase of me drumming it out, and I was even given a T-shirt with it on when I left my last company but one. But it just taught you about how to get the best out of teams. Everybody thinks they have this stereotypical view of the army, that you just tell people to do things, jump how high, and nothing could be further from the truth. You're leading in teams, groups of very motivated, very capable, young men, young women, and you have to learn how to get the best out of those teams in the most, at times, stressful environments. And you learn how to listen, to take advice, because you may be leading people who have got way more experience than you in certain situations. And to get the best out of the team, you have to learn how to communicate and to listen. Also, the British Army makes much of a thing called servant leadership, serve to lead. And as a leader, you are there to serve the team. You are there to make the team better by how you lead it or what you do. And I think these are things I've taken through with me all the way through my career, and never being late for meetings.
And as I'm very sorry about that. I've got a 6-week-old baby, and I've been late yesterday morning and this morning. So if was it 1 minute late is 5 minutes, I was 7 minutes late, I think, this morning. And
I'm a lot more relaxed in outside of work. I'm a lot more relaxed about it now. But as I used to say, if you're late for a meeting with a consultancy, that's money. They're charging you for that.
Yeah.
So yeah. But mainly it's a courtesy thing to me as well. But
no,
but only regard to work, Joe. Only regard to work, not regard to regard to you this morning.
I usually try to be early.
You do. No, you are always early.
So your tenure in the army, you were 20 years?
21
years.
Getting on for 22 years, yes.
And that period of time, a lot happened and the world changed a vast amount. So I'm really interested to know what your role was in this time and what kind of things and where you ended up in the world.
Well, I mean, when I first started in the army, the British Army was in Germany, it's in West Germany as it was then, and Northern Ireland. And actually my very first role, I was served with the infantry to start with, was leading a platoon in West Belfast in Northern Ireland, which was a real education, learnt a lot there. But from there, I then moved into flying and went and sort of flew helicopters with the army. But the whole world changed, and going from being in Germany, I, in probably not in chronological order, there was first Gulf War, there was Bosnia, second Gulf War, Afghanistan. The whole world changed, and the British Army, because of the politicians in charge at the time, became heavily involved in that, and they became very, things and incidents that you carry with you forever. Working with a great group of people in at times very stressful situations, and certainly wasn't the British Army that I joined at 21, 22. You really did see the world. Generally when there was sand involved. So we sort of largely swapped the mud of the West German plains for sand.
And so where did you serve in that period? Where
well, I mean, first, obviously in the Gulf several times, into Bosnia, Afghanistan. You obviously did training exercises, preparing for that in Canada and in Oman. But and I remember sat in Saddam Hussein's palace in Basra, marble everywhere. The British Army had decided to take over as its headquarters. Always like to be grand. Why be uncomfortable? Take over the palace, and I was sat overlooking the Châtel Arab, and I was, I was with my young lad, my driver signaller, and I said, I'll make the boot this evening. Got it on, flaming sunset, and I was just trying to. He thought this is what the army was like, and I just said, so different. I wouldn't have believed the career I had from 18, how the British Army had changed. sad that these conflicts happened, but when you're there, you just do what you've been sent to do and do your job, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I alluded in my intro question to you that you'd come back from the dead. And last year, you told me a story about when you were quite young. I think you were 21, 22. That was quite pivotal in your trajectory through the army, and then also today as well. So would you mind explaining what happened?
Well, a little older. I think I was 29 or 30.
Right, okay.
A little older. And after my sort of first period of years of sort of service in the army, I applied for training as a test pilot, military test pilot, and got in, very hard 1-year course. And then I was lucky enough to be sort of assigned to experimental flying squadron in Farnborough. We went to do lots of very strange and wacky things, which are other stories to tell. But on one of the trials we were on was in the south of France. Something went wrong, and it was a really, really, really bad crash into the sort of French hillside. There were 4 of us in the aircraft. Unfortunately, the 2 flight test engineers in the back were killed. It was very heavy impact, immediate fire, and I sort of managed to. The accident investigator I subsequently met in hospital told me he thought I was the luckiest man he'd met in his 20-year career in accident investigation, because the helicopter had come to rest over a ditch on my side and the emergency door had flown off. And so actually I was just able to drop out into the ditch. I didn't realise that at the time, and just crawl out past the ditch. And the aircraft was completely inflamed. And as I was getting out, I remember being something whacking me in my rib cage on the left-hand side, which was the other pilot, a Navy pilot, test pilot, standing on me to get out on the top of the cockpit. I was a very useful footstep for him. And I got to past the nose of the aircraft, turned around to think about going back in, and you could just flames everywhere. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to get a bit further away from this. And I went to stand up, and clearly the adrenaline had gone. I thought, no, I won't stand up because that's rather too painful. And I crawled about another 20 feet, and that's where I was found. And I mean, the main injuries, I'd got some burns, but I'd broken my back and my neck, compression fractures in my back and my neck. And I was lifted off from the mountainside by French medical services, emergency medical services, into the same type of helicopter I was going to talk about that I just left in the mountainside, and taken off to French Naval Hospital, very close to where you and I went cycling last year. And not in a good way at all. And actually, I think that the part about coming back from the dead, the BBC, organisation I always truly respect, in effect announced my death on the 1 o'clock news, BBC Radio 4, which was heard by my parents, and which I think they found slightly upsetting. I'm probably not too upset, but slightly upsetting, and only they've subsequently found out about an hour later when they got a phone call that I'd been in an accident, and I was, whilst I wasn't okay, I was alive. So and then I spent quite a bit of time in French Naval Hospital, who looked after me very well. I've been subsequently told I was very lucky that I was in a French hospital, because they had a very different method of treating that sort of fracture.
Right.
I was told in England I'd just been putting traction for a very long time. The French had a different view. There were other aspects of the care weren't so great, but I was very lucky, and that allowed me to sort of mobilise and then evacuated back. And at the time, they weren't really sure. They certainly weren't sure if I'd fly again, but they weren't actually sure whether I'd sort of regain full mobility and sort of be able to sort of walk properly or whatever. And that just engaged in me that slight, I won't swear, F you attitude, I'll show you, and made a return to flying, returned back to health, and I'm back into it. But it was quite and I suppose in relation to this, it drove me on again. I did have a period of time where I thought I might be immortal, but I didn't think that was an overly helpful thought, overly helpful. Just this kick on again on fitness, I think. It sort of kicked me on again. I can sort myself out. I can get fit again. I can do this again. And I probably ended up doing too much of the not such right things. But yeah, so, and I still, I'm still a bit wonky in the back. I'm about 3/4 of an inch shorter than I used to be. And I wasn't tall at the best of times, but I'm about 3/4 of an inch. It used to be an inch shorter, but I've decompressed again by about 1/4 of an inch. And apparently an Air Force doctor was able to tell me from the deformation of the spine exactly what the my G loading had been during the crash. And he said, you're just very lucky. A little bit more and it would have just snapped it. And
so was that a case of, as you said, you mustered your FU attitude and you kind of cracked on as you were your trajectory that you were going on, or did that change anything you wanted to do, or the way that you were?
I've sort of always had this very strong FU attitude. If someone tells me it can't be, I can't do it. I did. The first English, the guy who came to see me in the French hospital from my unit, still recalls the fact that the first thing I said to him, I'd just been put on the roster for about a year and a bit's time to go on a test attachment with NASA over in California. And he always remembers the first words I said to him was, "Tell them not to replace me." Tell them not to replace me. I'll be fine. And so no, I think in some ways, though I jokingly said for a while I thought about immortality, I can't be broken. It actually showed my mortality to me very clearly, and that I needed to look after my body. I wanted to go back and do all these things I had done before, and maybe more so. But it's made me think I'm going to have to look after myself. So I sort of made efforts to look after myself and maybe keep fitter. But I was doing this with no great education about what I should be eating and how I should be exercising. It was very much self-driven. But
that's actually, it's something that interests me quite a lot about the military, because you are one of a few people actually that I have worked with and coached that are either current service people or have previously served. And military fitness versus sports performance is quite a different thing.
Very different.
So I always find that trend that quite an interesting overlap in some areas, but then also in other areas it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, I'm very out of date now. I can't speak to how it was done now, and the professional physical trainers who were part of the PT corps were very good. They were very skilled, very good, but they were training to an aim. It was about weight. It was about endurance, being able to effectively carry weight over long periods of time, marching or running, or bit of upper body fitness for lifting. It was all very functional. I'm not sure if that's like very functional. And the nutrition, I don't think at any stage in my military career there was any nutritional education. It was all about carbs, calories, not even carbs. It's about calories in. What's the calorie count? All about calories in, and nothing about rest, stretching, or Pilates or yoga. And now I suspect it's very different now. But it was all about very functional fitness, adapting for hot weather, adapting for the real weights you were carrying, very physically demanding environments. But at my time, there was no nutritional training, and there was very little. It sounds a bit hard. Very little well-being. People in stressful situations, and I know it's much better now. I'm a big supporter of a veterans charity called Combat Stress, which sort of seeks to help people who have been in these stressful environments. There was no real sort of decompression or well-being. You just sort of coped with it, and I know that's much improved now. I know that's much improved now. So it was nowhere near, my nutritional knowledge for fitness in the last 2 years is hugely more than had been in the previous 60 years.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that we've done the first kind of chapter there. We've gone through the military and the things that you've drawn from the military, and something that you said early on was that you have these 4 or 5 life-shaping character moments, the military being one of them. Can you talk to me about what some of the other ones might be?
Yeah, I mean, if I start first the list, I would put my family, and I'm the youngest of 6 kids. And by the time I came along, my parents were completely bored with children. So, I could do what I liked, really. But I grew up with 4 older sisters and an older brother. And I think being in that large family set a lot about my character for later years, in that you had to get used to compromise. You were never going to get your own way. You also had to, when I say fight for your own way, to have your bit, you would sometimes actually fight when you were younger. And
I know that very well. I've got a younger brother.
Actually fight. But also argue. So you have to accept compromise, but you'd also have to learn is if you didn't stand up for yourself, you were just going to get rolled over. And it was a very, when I say not challenging, we tough love family. We look after each other, but it is a tough love, and that taught me a lot. And I think when we're having dinner yesterday evening, I think I spoke to you. I think having 4 older sisters who are all smart, strong characters. One thing I've never had an issue about is in the workplace. Men, women, it's just people working, and I think the army spent a lot of time with a hang-up about female soldiers and gay soldiers. And I remember some senior officer visited me and asked me what I thought about this, and I said I just had 2 simple things: soldiers I'd go to war with and soldiers I won't. And some of those soldiers I'd go to war with are men, some are women, some are straight, and some are gay. And soldiers I didn't want to go to war with, some are men, some are women, some are straight, some are gay. And I think that came out of the family, constantly being challenged and compromise and having to stand your corner. If I then sort of go on later, we talked about the army in quite a lot of length. Then quite a strange one. I did a series of jobs. I went and did a job with Skanska, the Swedish company, Global Construction. I worked in their infrastructure development arm. And this, I'd been around the world with the army, and I thought I'd seen lots of culture. It took me quite a while to adapt to that Skanska Swedish culture. It was very, very, what's the right word? Their leadership, everybody had to be on board. It was a real listening, getting everybody on board. And if an idea sort of didn't get escape velocity, unless you got everybody on board, it was a very positive way of leadership that, again, had a lasting effect on me about a completely different leadership style and management style that really did work hard to get everybody on board behind the idea. And I think I've carried that through. I won't go quite chronological now. Unfortunately, Joe, I'm going to have to put you in there in the last 2 years because my 2 and a bit years with you, which was going to start off at no more than 6 months, has been transformational. And yes, I could say it's been transformational in terms of my fitness, and I know you've probably got all the data. It has been transformational in terms of performance and fitness, but also in just well-being and everything you do and I then do. It's enjoyable. Yes, it's hard work, but it's fun. It's enjoyable. What you taught me about food and nutrition and always positive, always take the lessons, always take the positives. What can I take out of this? It has, and it's not because I'm sat here and other people will say I would quote you as one of those, which then brings me to the other positive influence. And I sometimes say I get too much positive in my life, which brings me on to my wife Louise, who has taught me she's had endless patience and support, but just trying to see the best in people, always see the best in people, always being kind, always seeing the positive, challenging my thoughts, but again, has completely knocked some of the harder edges off me, which I think has improved me both in work and just as a person. So those are what I would do. Hope I haven't embarrassed you though, Joe.
No, incredibly kind words and very, very appreciative. I'm going to give you an honesty bomb here as well. It's when I take on a client such as yourself that has, we've listened to some of the background that you've got. You've led on the battlefield in some of the biggest conflicts of the last 30, 40 years. You've led quite large organizations, and then you say things like that. It is very difficult to me to know what can I offer you. So I'm interested to know what benefits you've found from the coaching experience, because as you said, when you first started, and this is not just about me, I think this is any good coach will do this, but what have you found really the big benefits and positives about being coached?
I mean, if I just take as read the technical side of it, and there I'm taking as read of the huge knowledge that you or any other sort of really good coach would bring about. You need to be doing this. Just focus on this. Focus on that. Focus on this. But almost just take that as read. You've expanded my what I think is possible. What's possible for me. I think I was trying to remember what it was. I think I started working with you because I was doing a part-time master's at Cambridge University, and you'd made a discounted offer to Cambridge University students. One that I think you subsequently regretted making when you had to remove the discount, which you did in the nicest possible way when I'd ceased being a part-time student. And it was I just sort of got into Gran Fondo racing, and I think I wanted to do 6 months of training just to see how good I could go. And in that 6 months, I achieved enough, and I came away from that and I thought, do you know what? I was still quite a long way from qualification from the Gran Fondo World Championship, but working with you made me think, hang on a minute, that might be achievable. And what a really nice thing to do. Cool, I say bad decisions for the wrong reasons. Cool jersey, cool jersey to have the GB jersey on, cool jersey. And so you expanded my horizons of what you felt was possible. Your confidence in me, and obviously in your own coaching, I think was a really, really thing that you've brought. Reflection. You've brought great reflection. You've taught me to be more reflective. Don't just get off the ride and go, why didn't I hit my numbers that I wanted to there? Well, why didn't I hit my numbers? Let's think back. Let's think back to yesterday. Let's think back to stress. Let's think back to food. Let's think back to, were you in the right attitude? Were you listening to everything? So taught me to be more reflective. Then the nutrition, the fact, taking a chunk of weight off.
Not just a chunk.
Taking a chunk of weight off, but doing that whilst losing no power. So all that going into power to weight ratio, because I don't think my power might even have crept up slightly whilst I was doing the weight loss. Again, you'll have the figures. So that's what's brought me. Challenge. Are you trying hard enough? No, you never quite put like that. But could you be doing more? I think you could be doing harder. You're in the comfort zone. That push out of the comfort zone. And just a great sounding board. And you learn this in the army and in business. It's always great to have an honest sounding board. I've never believed in surrounding myself with yes men and yes women. What's the point of a team? The point of a team is diversity of thought, challenge, all wanting to go the same way. All you've ever wanted, Joe, is the best for me to do the best I can. And great sounding board.
And I think that's when it works. That's when it works really well. And that's the clients such as yourself where you've had some, quite well. We can talk through. I've got all of your numbers and improvements and things that you've achieved in the last couple of years written down. But when you view it as a team, and it's a two-way thing. It's a sounding board. I'm here to give constructive feedback to you, but to be there to help you as well. But also I expect the same of you, to challenge me and ask me questions, etc.
Which I do. Yes. Generally stupid ones about...
No, there's no such thing.
There is. There is. I think we can all have to agree to disagree on that.
Do you feel that the cycling that you've been doing the last few years has helped you in other areas of your life? Do you think has it impacted your work as well, having an outlet?
Yes. There's no doubt. It was always a de-stress thing for me. But actually, I always work better with a focus, a purpose, common purpose. In business, common purpose. Where are we going? Where do we want to get to? Where do we want to get to? And I think as a leader in business, one of the best things you can set your teams is to be really clear about where we're going. And it's been really clear, where am I going? And I want to do this, where we're going. I feel that doing Hope Route in the Alps was my idea this summer, but on reflection, it was very clearly your idea that you had planned. But again, it was that challenge. You could do this multi-event thing, and that led me to doing the Grand Fondo Cyprus, so I could do a multi-day event, got used to it. So it's certainly fitted in with my life in terms of purpose. Mental well-being, just the stress, just because it's always been enjoyable. It's never been a grind. I've never got on the indoor trainer or the bike and gone, oh God, I've got to do this. That's reminded me what my point was now. I'll come back to it. So it's never been a grind. And the health, the fact is I'm not just fitness, I am healthier. I mean, I feel I had a very healthy diet anyway. I mean, when you said how many different plant-based things do you eat, again, this is due to Louise, it was quite a large number. But again, just knowing much more about what to eat when has, I think, clearly helped my health. I'll come back to the other point now. I forgot that you've always been very accommodating and able to work in stress, the demands of the job, of I can't do that. I can't do 4 hours, I can't do 3, and I can't do 4 or 5 hours on Sunday because I want to spend some time with my family. And you've always worked that in, never gone, oh, well, that's just not good enough. You've always worked that in. And you've also accommodated, hate to use the A word, you've accommodated my age. And I probably need more rest than an athlete, someone who's 25, who needs no rest at all. And you've always, just allowed for the fact I am in the more mature years of my performance career.
So you're 63.
I am 63 at the moment.
And you've decided that the age of 63 is going to be the time that you do all of these multi-stage races in places such as Cyprus and the Alps. If you're to give a tip to other people that are maybe in your situation that have very busy lives, things going on, what have you got from the experience of training for these things and entering these events, and that it's given you across your, what tips would you give them?
Oh gosh, what tips? First one would be the simple one: do it. Even if you think you can't, if you have a slight inkling that maybe I could, you can. You can. And you can actually do it on a pretty constrained time per week. You can actually do it on a pretty constrained time. So I would say do it, because you will just feel good about yourself. And when you feel good about yourself, you are then, perhaps I should speak only personally, I'm then a just much nicer person to be around. I'm if I get off after a hard day at work, if I get off the bike, I'm a much nicer person to be around, one way or another. So it certainly helped my health, it's helped with de-stress, but just this other purpose outside of the business purpose. Having another thing that's focused on can only be good for balance in life. And you have lots to talk about sustainability now in the environmental sense and energy sense, but sustainability, and I always talk to my senior team about this, people's personal efforts in work need to be sustainable as well. It's no good burning yourself out. You've got to be able to keep producing that, and got to focus on yourself. The great, I forget whose 3 rings it is, team, task, self. And the prioritizing of team, task and self needs to shift depending on the sequence. Mainly it's task or team, but sometimes you have to focus on yourself. And for me, the cycling with a purpose has just really helped that, maximizing the benefit of the self time.
And I don't think there's any coincidence there, because we know from the science, but when it comes to psychology, sports psychology, or any kind of performance psychology, that the identity, having multiple identities is beneficial for your overall performance. And I think we can see that in yourself. You're one of the most consistent athletes that I work with. It's almost unheard of that you will ever skip a session. I think that's because we've probably spent we spent a couple of years working together now, and we've fine-tuned how things fit into your week, and we can amend things, and you've got a good idea. But also, I think there is a case of consistency does breed consistency. And that the more consistent you are with that, the better things go in work, the better life goes, the better the training goes. And when one thing needs to allow for something else, if work's not going great, well, your cycling might be the outlet that you need there.
It is, and it's on the consistency. And this is one of the advantage one of the other advantages of having a coach compared with just a training plan. Every week I sort of say to you, this is what I think I can do next week on these days and these days, and you produce a plan towards the overall aim that fits in what I've said that's available. So I'm not trying to take a generically produced 12, 16 week plan and then fit it into, oh no, sorry, I'm in London for 3 days next week, full out, I can't do this other than I can get to the gym. You get a program that's achievable. And I think that really helps with the consistency. Character-wise, I like the structure. I like the structure of the plan, and I find that self-discipline helps.
I think we could have a look at some of your improvements. I've got them all listed here. So we started working together in late 2022, and we did a series of, we benchmark quite regularly. Every couple of months we'll do a series of benchmarking tests. Very painful. Gives us a great idea of where you're going and what's happening with your physiology. So November 2022, for 3 minutes you were doing 286 watts. You're now doing 336 watts, which is 17% gain. And the other thing we should mention as well, to contextualize all of this, is that we started doing some nutritional work last year together, didn't we? And you've lost 13 kilos of body fat. And we should also talk about how we've done that, because weight in endurance sport is always a sensitive topic. I'm very keen on doing it sustainably and properly. So we were lucky enough with you that we could do things like DEXA scans to actually properly inform what we were doing. So we knew how much body fat we had to lose and how we were going to do it. So yeah, we're in the place now where you are 1 year down, sustainably lost 13 kilos of weight, and seeing improvement still at 63 on the bike as well, which is fantastic.
It's quite surprising, and you know, and if you're like in yesterday when we're going around the island, and I was on my fast road bike and you were on your gravel bike, and I think you were a little underhydrated. I thought, well, do you know what? I think I could take Joe on. And then I rapidly slapped
I would have enjoyed that.
I'd have rapidly slapped myself out of it, because it would have been a brief victory, a Pyrrhic victory that would have lasted about 5 seconds until you'd got out of the saddle. And
well, but
but I couldn't do that ride we did yesterday, 2 years ago.
But it's dramatic, because you're, as I said, you're 3 minutes, 286 to 336. Your 20 minute 220 to 250, and your 60 minutes gone from 200 to 230. So you're doing more for an hour now than you were for a 12-minute all-out effort. And when we take into consideration the weight loss as well, the overall gain is in the region of between 30 to 40% performance improvement at the age 63, which is just a huge congratulations to you for doing all of this
team
work.
effort.
It's a great team effort.
And actually, the Cyprus, the 3-day Grand Fondo in Cyprus, which was, 2 very hilly days.
Yeah. So what did that look? Talk us through Grand Fondo Cyclist.
It was at Cyprus. Yeah. It was 3-day. First time I'd done a multi-day. First day was a time trial, undulating course, and that was really just power. It was a power. There were people there on the TT bike. I was on the road bike, and as I always say to you, I always enjoy it when I overtake a TT bike and a TT on a road bike. And I think I averaged nearly 250 watts for that. And again, just that power, less so the weight. The power was it was great, and I just felt really, really good, because it felt comfortably uncomfortable. I was pushing it, but I didn't feel I was going to burn, and that was great on the power. And then the next 2 days were, I live in Cambridge, so not just hilly, really hilly, really, really hilly stages, and the climbing, I was going past people, and it just felt, I just felt really strong in the climb. They'd all overtake me on the descents, but some of them overtake me on the descents, but then I go past them on the climb, and actually it's not the result, though I think got relatively creditable result over the 3 days in the Grand Fondo. It was that feeling. It's just that feeling that is actually what I did. And I think you asked me before, what's a win for you? And I said, just that feeling that I had given it the best. And I really had that feeling. I felt I had given it my all and done pretty well.
Amazingly well. And again, your general training at the moment, you're a CEO, so you're very busy at work. You're training on about 6 to 7 hours a week on average, and also just off the back of having lost quite a lot of weight over the last year. I'm interested on the nutritional side. What are some of the biggest surprises there, or what are the biggest learnings?
Oh gosh, periodization. I would say periodization is the.
And what is that? Tell me what's your understanding?
Joe. Sorry, really, that's a question for you. What periodization? Broadly, I was eating the right stuff.
Yeah.
If you take a macro review, I was broadly eating the right stuff. broadly. But what I was not doing was I was under fueling for hard days, and then I was over fueling on other days, and getting that merging together of what I was doing exercise wise to the diet, I think was the key learning that periodization. Protein, we certainly up to my protein intake, and I'd consumed a lot of fish anyway, but I learned the protein uptake. And then I think, and those are the sort of the big hand things. Then the detailed was the fueling, the specific things before an event, the beetroot, the travails we had over bicarb, eventually finding a solution, the fueling on the bike, because I was under fueling on the bike, which obviously was starting to have on the long events was having an issue. Many reasons why I was under fueling, but that my fueling was much better. So I think, and an example of that is I forget maybe this time last year I went to US, did the Gran Fondo Maryland, 150 kilometers race, quite a long race for me. And I get off it disappointed that I'd averaged 39.6 kilometres an hour, and I'm just thinking, why didn't I push and get it to 40? And that's because I fueled. That's because I was fueling, and I could sustain that effort all the way through, along with lots of other things. And so I saw it in performance as well. But I'm feeling better. I feel better as well.
And it's unbelievably common. So effectively, when you're talking about periodization, what we're talking about is carbohydrate periodization, which is the process by which we fuel. In nutrition, we have this saying called fueling for the demands that are required. So you fuel harder and more on days where you are asked to go harder and longer, and on the easier days, your recovery days, your easier endurance rides, you are you don't need to fuel as much. A common problem with a lot of athletes is whereby they almost have a static energy intake across days. So they might be slightly over on some of the easy days, but they're massively under on their long hard days. So lots of riders go out on the weekend, they go out on a Saturday or Sunday, will do a long, very hard, maybe a group ride, and they will put themselves in a huge calorie deficit. And what actually then happens, and I see this in a lot of people that I work with, is they super compensate the next few days. So from from a performance perspective, this isn't great, because it means that you've probably lost a couple of days whilst you're low. You've reduced a load of available energy to do your training. Then also from a body composition or weight management perspective, what then happens is people are so hungry the next day after a ride. And I think I remember you saying this actually in some of your sessions. I think it's to the effect of, you wake up the next day and you think, God, I actually feel okay today.
I do. Yeah, I can go again.
Yeah, I could go again.
I can go again.
Yeah. And this is this principle why carbohydrate periodization. So your hard days and your big days is a lot. It's a lot of carbohydrate. You end up eating a lot more than you usually would. But we can see, it works. You're a year down, having done a load of learning on this, and it's working together. You're 13 kilos lighter. Your power across the board has gone up. Your real world performance. I'm interested to know as well. So we use Alpe de Zwift, don't we, as one of our benchmark.
I wish I'd never started that as a benchmark. Yeah.
So can you what's been your improvement there? Can you tell me?
Oh gosh, you should have asked me to prepare this question. You probably know the answer. I think when we started, and I know you don't agree with how I do this. I've kept my weight constant in Zwift.
Yes.
Because then it's a pure, to me, and I know you prefer it if I didn't, but in my mind, Zwift is a pure power measurement to me. How am I on power and the ability, what power can I generate and how long can I sustain it for? And I take weight out of the factor because it helps me understand where I am power-wise and endurance-wise, sustainability-wise, and it takes the weight out of the factor. So weight's not involved in my Alpe Zwift times. I think when I started with you probably, I just cracked 60 minutes or just cracked 60 minutes. And I think the last one I did, I don't think I'd quite got under 50, but I'd knocked 10 minutes off it. I got very, and as ever with
with
you,
the same weight.
With the same weight.
Yeah, so not even
I haven't changed the weight.
Over 10 kilos.
I haven't changed the weight. So that's pure power and ability to sustain that power. In effect, 10 minutes off, and I get off disappointed that if I'd just gone that little bit harder. And also, you've taught me a lot about pacing the effort, pace the effort. Time trialing as such, that skill of pacing that effort. And so, no, it's a nice gym. I just need to get it under 50 minutes now, but it's
well, you'd be well under when you change your weight.
Well, no, you see, in my head, it just works well as a power measure because it's a game, Swift. It's gamification, so I play it as a game.
If you could go back 10 years and speak to Peter of 10 years ago, what would you be telling him?
Oh, gosh. Probably buy gold. Buy gold and Bitcoin and don't make as much fun of Donald Trump. Probably. Oh, gosh. Stretch more. Stretch more. Don't mock Pilates.
What benefits have you found there then from stretching?
Just a feeling really, because I've improved my flexibility with stretching, and certainly after the accident we discussed earlier, I should have done way more stretching because I am quite constrained across the back and how I turn. You've probably seen it if you're following me cycling. I don't find it. I'm not particularly flexible in looking back over my shoulder and turning around. It just, I don't know. I mean, I can't say it's made my cycling any better, but it's certainly made me feel better. Mm-hmm. And I've been quite injury-free in the time we've worked together. I've had COVID a couple of times, but I've been quite injury-free. So it's hard to think, but I've been injury-free. I'm feeling pretty good. So I'd have done stretching earlier. I'd have eaten better, understood a bit more about nutrition. And yeah, things more core strength work. Though, I started the core strength before I started working with you, actually. When I was at a gym in West London, they had a very good coach, instructor there, so big on core. So yeah, eat better, stress less, and I always like, in a flippant way, I don't know if you're a fan of zombie movies. I'm a fan of zombie movies.
Did like Afterlife? That's one of mine.
No, because it lacks the, I like sort of the black humour of Zombieland. Right. And I frequently live my life by the rules of Zombieland, which is enjoy the little things. Enjoy the little things more. Celebrate success, enjoy the little things, and never be afraid to ask for help. Those are always two rules I take from the Zombieland film that I try and teach everybody.
Do you think your mindset's changed a little bit there over the last couple of years since we've been working together when you look at it as it relates to cycling?
Yeah, I do, but but to set it in a context of a broader change, and people I work with recently would say I'm very driven and very ambitious, and all I say to them is, my God, you should have seen me in my 20s and my 30s. Mm-hmm. This has chilled me, and I think I have developed. It was something I was doing anyway, and I talked earlier about when I was with Skanska, this very tech style they had of leadership and management, which I found a very good one and sought to learn from, but much more reflective, less hard on myself. My wife would always say I'm too hard on myself, and I try to be. I wouldn't say I'm less hard on myself, because actually one of the things that's driven me on to be successful in certain areas is that I am self-aware and self-critical, but I now try and do that in a more reflective way with what I've learned with cycling and more general terms with you, and where things haven't gone well, try and analyse and understand why. Much more. The other influence on what I spoke about, Louise, as another sort of positive influence. Be kinder to yourself, understand, move on. And actually,
is that different to how you would have done it in your 20s and 30s?
Yeah, I'd have very hard on myself. I was very driven to do certain things, and it was partly. The army likes driven people. It does, but it was also driven by my slight F you attitude that's not always driven. When I really wanted to get do the test pilot, and not the easiest thing to do. Drove myself to do it, and when I went to do that. Somebody in the Army Careers Management said, well, of course, once you do that, you've become a total specialist, and you get back then into the main A career stream. And I just thought, F you. And then I drove myself to get back into the main career stream, which I successfully did, went on to Squadron Command, Regimental Command, and everything else. So... but probably unhealthily so. Never took time to smell the roses or enjoy the moment. There was always another thing, and I suppose the army was quite clever in that. There was once you'd achieved something, there's always another thing to achieve. There's always another thing to achieve, and always another thing to achieve, and just enjoy the moment. And I've got much better in enjoying the moment. And I look back, and during my sort of flying career, I saw people that, we always had the American exchange pilot in one of my squadrons, and after a particularly demanding, you always had this view that a particularly demanding sort of night mission on the night vision goggles, which are quite demanding to use. He'd always, sit down, light up a big cigar, and enjoy them. I've never been a smoker, but that little bit of, smell the roses, enjoy the moment, enjoy the little things, and I've tried to get a lot better at that, and partly succeeded.
So I'm in my mid-30s. I've got a young family. I've got a 2-year-old and a 6-week-old. Met both of them last night. You're very good with them.
That's because I love Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yes, you do. And you're a helicopter pilot, just like Harold.
Yeah, and just like Harold.
Yeah. So, what kind of tips would you give me? I've been running my own business for a couple of years. I've got a young family. Yes. You can we will flip it around here. I've been coaching you on performance related stuff to do with cycling, and how would you flip that around for me?
The first thing I'll say, despite all the intelligence of the human race, we are shockingly bad at learning from other people's experience. In flying, you'll say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And everyone goes, yeah, what happened to me? And you only learn from your other experience. So, we humans, not good at learning from other people's experience. So, it's a lesson identified, but it's certainly not a lesson learned. And so that's the first thing. Joe, what I would say is you're navigating young family demands way better and with way more forethought than I did. Firstly, take a pat on the back.
Oh, well, yeah.
Take a pat on the back.
It feels like a roller coaster.
And the other thing, is you're not the first person I've said this to in the teams I've worked with, and I talked about earlier about sustainability. You've got to get that balance right. And what's important in life? What's really important in life? And people say this, when you're on your deathbed, you don't regret the time you've not spent at work. Get that right balance right. And when you just had your birth of your second child, you really step back for a period of time, and I just thought that was such a positive thing to see, that you step back from the business and you did that. And there'll be other times in life. Sports days, huge hugely, children's sports days, hugely important to them. Music concerts, to be able to see you in the audience waving at them, and little things for you, huge. Just and enjoy it. So get that balance right is all I'd say to you. Yeah, work hard at your business. You've chosen a tough business, running your own business, and I've always had the luxury of being salaried. Had to work hard, but always had that protection of the salary. So you will have to work hard, but try and just get that balance and enjoy where you live, enjoy your friends, but particularly enjoy your family. That's the only advice.
And I'm fully aware of, because it's something I think about a huge amount. I work with a lot of different people, different walks of life, but quite a few people that have been very successful. And I'm fully aware, and I notice it in the work that I do all the time. The people that can manage that better tend to be, well, almost always the people that will enjoy more, will actually end up them performing better as well. I first started as a cycling coach in order to, my passion was about physiology and understanding performance, but I'd always loved the people side of things. The people side of things is coming out so much more in recent years, since I've had a family, since I've worked with big pool of clients now, and seeing actually that's such a fundamental part of the whole thing. Cycling is it can be important to people, whatever it might be other sports, but really how it slots into the package is actually as important as the cycling itself. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. The overall performance is fundamental, especially, a lot of my clients are not full time. Some of them are, but even those guys that are full time, it's still a case of actually how do we diversify across these things and get not go through life and it's gone because we've been trying to chase a watt on the bike, for example.
Yeah, it's and I think, I'm not particularly in an event results driven. A place more, a place less. Great. It's how I feel. Do I feel that? I feel on a real high now, and that's what it's all been about. And I've been lucky. I suppose my skill in life has been, I don't feel I have any particular talents, actually, but what I am quite good at is building teams and identifying people and building successful teams. It's my success has been built on the achievements of others. My achievement has been to bring them into the team and not recruiting in my own image, recruiting people who are different to me with a different perspective. I don't need somebody who's got my point of view in my senior team. I need somebody who's got a different perspective, and we come to a better solution. So, so I feel sometimes I feel a bit of a fraud, imposter syndrome. Because I think I said to you, I went to a Steve Peters talk. He said anybody who doesn't have imposter syndrome is a psychopath. Yeah, which I thought was an interesting comment pretty much at the start of his talk. But yeah.
And he's well worth a read, isn't he? For anybody that's interested in performance, Steve, the chimp paradox and all of those bits that he's read, well worth a read.
No, I slightly struggled with I'm going to be honest. I slightly struggled with the chimp paradox.
What did you struggle with?
Well, I just thought it was a bit of an I just thought it's a simplification, but a more reflective person I know said it's a model. And if it works for some people, if it worked for some people in British cycling, it's fine. It may not work for you. I think last night we were talking about, for some reason we got talking onto Myers-Briggs personality typing. It's never worked for me. And I think I talked to you how I see Winnie the Pooh as a better model. And then I think we talked about that film we'd watched recently, Bullet Train, where one of the characters identified everybody as a character from Thomas the Tank Engine and from the character traits. And
I might borrow that from you. So I think what you were saying last night was the classic psychological profiling tools that a lot of organizations use. The colors and the Myers-Briggs will try to define people by the way their natural preferences. So whether they're analytical, they're leaders, they're more team workers, etc. And you use Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Because it's more story based.
Yes, and I think we both get stories are more important. And I've always had this view that a good team has every character from Winnie the Pooh in it. It has a piglet who worries about things. It has a Tigger who's enthusiastic about everything. It has Christopher Robin, who is a complete finisher. Owl, who's very wise, and it's that, and Roo, who mothers the team and looks after the team, and I think that's a way for always has been to me to reinforce the importance of diversity of team and the strength of diversity of thought, different views and whatever. And I just think it paints a picture because I think most people have some understanding. A lot of people have some understanding of Winnie the Pooh stories. So,
and I think ultimately that's what ends up happening from a coaching perspective or and a leadership perspective, is that I'm trying to fulfil that for you. And I might borrow your. I might start labelling my clients as Winnie the Poohs or piglets.
I think I stole it from. I can't remember. I think someone else 30 plus years ago. So every idea is borrowed, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is a process that I will do if I start with when I start with somebody. There will be a period of several months where you're working each other around and trying to understand what is this person's natural preferences, how do they tick, how can we best communicate with them, which then gives you the evidence to know how you can best help them. I think, again, from a coach perspective, that does take a bit of time, but it's really some of the magic of the teamwork bit. And when you get that bit right, you can really then start to help people and get the best out of them.
And I suspect in coaching, what people may say to you, this is how I like my feedback, may not actually be how they like their feedback.
It's how they think they want to like.
It's how they think they want to, and I can imagine it becoming very complex. And I think I said to you, I think I'd had some ride where I'd not hit the numbers. I think you'd come back. You must have been online because you came back very quickly on Training Peaks with a positive message about this. And then I was chatting to my wife, and the reason she then also had a similarly reinforcing positive message. And I just said, look, I've just had enough positive messages. I just need someone to tell me to, for goodness sake, do better.
I don't think that's ever a thing with you, though. You always, as I said, you're one of the most consistent people that I work with. So, Peter, we've been working together for 2 years.
Yes.
We're about to work together for another 2 years.
Yes.
We've got the Oat Route Alps this summer, which we've spoken about.
Yes.
We've seen a huge amount of progression from you in the last couple of years across the board. What's next? Where are you going? What are you looking forward to?
I won't use the journey word because I don't like what I call the J word. And if a consultant says we're going on a journey, I always stand up, pick up my jacket, and say, "Are we going on the bus or the train?" Because I've got some thoughts about what I'd like to do. You've been kind enough to say I'm doing Haute Route Alps this summer. Actually, I'm doing the 3-day. I'm doing the Haute Route Alps decaffeinated or Haute Route Alps light. So providing I don't keel over this summer, I'd like to do the 7-day, the full caffeinated next summer. I've talked about I'd like to do next spring either Tour Flanders Sport. I'd like to do some of the classic cobbled climbs. I don't know if my bike would like to do it. And at some point, I'd quite like to do Strade Bianche, because they just look so beautiful. I don't think I'd like to do it in early spring. I think I'd quite like to go when Tuscany is beautiful and do it. And I think also next year, not that I think about these things, I step up an age group in Gran Fondo terms. And I think I'd like a go at, maybe decent class qualification again in 26. So, and then 27, I I don't know, something. If in 26 I did 7-day Haute Route Alps, maybe I should do Haute Route Pyrenees. Thereafter, listening to you and your friend chatting over coffee and cake yesterday, maybe not Haute Route Pyrenees, because you just said, "Oh no, everything's worse in the Pyrenees." I think, okay.
Study, it's beautiful, steeper in the Pyrenees.
So, yeah, I just like to do. I suppose it's like shared experience. So when you see them on Strade Bianche or Tour Flanders, you think, yeah, some of these great names that you hear talked about, do you actually go and experience it a little bit of what it's like, and get an appreciation of just how quick the professionals are. I think when we were cycling in Provence and I was cycling myself back your namesake climb, I was going down the namesake climb, and there was somebody going up who was clearly he had the full kit, though everyone in France has the full kit on, but he was clearly a world tour professional, and he was going up that climb faster than I was going down it. And it's sobering.
There's always someone quicker.
Always somebody quicker. But hey, doesn't mean you need to feel bad about how you were doing.
Absolutely not. No, it's a releasing thought in my opinion.
So that's my plans for the next 18 months, 2 years.
And we've heard from you today about you've reached high echelons of the army and experienced a lot of stuff there. You've led some big companies in your specialism about building teams. You are at the age of 63, filling some of your long-term performance goals and being incredibly fit and getting yourself stuck into some of the hardest things that you can do. For other driven performance people, what would you say is your take-home message?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure I could simple. I always divert it to another story. I should have been a politician. We did an exercise senior team, last company I've just moved on from. Sum up the company in 3 words. And they all came up with some because some of them came up with some quite good things actually. And they came to me, and mine was, Chief Executive, more to do. Always more to do. And I think in cycling it's always more to do. And I don't mean that's a bad thing, because I still think I can improve. I'm 63 and I still think I can improve. And I think that's the thing. But can't say just do it, because that would fall under copyright. that would break IP and copyright. Just believe and enjoy it. Believe you can do it, and just smile. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy the ride of the preparation, the event. Just enjoy it, because it's great. I mean, if nothing else, after all, everything else everything we've done, all the training, in simplest terms, just to go out on the ride we did yesterday, and I was able to do it with a smile on my face the whole way and enjoy it. That's a goal in itself, because I'm enjoying my cycling so much more. Yes, do I enjoy it when I'm in a small group of 30-year-olds and I beat them to the top of the hill? Oh God, yes, I enjoy that. But yeah, just do it just enjoy it.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to finish. So, Peter, thank you.
Joe, thank you
very, very much for talking about your life. It's been incredibly interesting, and I really appreciate the time.
No, appreciate it. Thanks very much, Joe.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.